Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. I know that I think there's a few people still making their way in, but I think, well, let's just get started. Let's just kick things off. It's really, really great to see you all here at this wonderful event. It is called Powerful Together, and it's an event from Solace Women's Aid. This has been an incredible week of International Women's Day events, and I'm so proud to be here today, tonight, with you all. I often feel when International Women's Day comes around that it's like your birthday. If you're lucky enough to make your birthday last a month, I don't know if any of you are like I am, and you can make it stretch the entire month, and that's what it feels like with International Women's Day sometimes. So it is amazing that we're all here. I would just like to quickly start with some basic housekeeping so you can get the marigolds out. There are no plans whatsoever for fire drills tonight, so if you do hear the alarm, then please leave by the exit. So the exit is just at the back there, which I'm pointing to just now, and we do have a meeting point which is on Red Street by Club Row, so make sure you meet us there, and we've got lots of staff around in Solace t-shirts who will provide assistance if that does happen, so don't worry, we won't expect you to do it all yourself. We've got people there to help. Now, it would be great for all of you to turn your phone on to silent tonight. We don't want you to turn it off, but whether you airplane mode it or something else, just if you put it on to silent, that would be great, but we really want you to take photos. The event is called Powerful Together, and we want people to know that we're here together, and we want people to know that we're united this evening. So please do take lots of pictures, take videos, share your snaps online using the event hashtag Powerful Together, obviously. Now, it is so great to see everyone here because this is, we're coming together for probably one of the first events that we've had, or one of the first International Women's Day events that have been possible in person since about 2019, before the pandemic, where all of us were locked down and so many doors were closed. And now, as we know, behind those closed doors, so many women and so many children were subjected to domestic abuse in the place that they should have felt safest, their home. You know, with that in mind, it's really important to say that tonight, because the nature of the work that Solace does, and due to some of the discussions that we have this evening, or some of the films even that we show, that they could be triggering for some of you in the audience. So if at any time you do feel upset, if any time you do feel a wee bit overwhelmed and you do need to step out, please do that. Don't worry about disrupting anything. You won't be at all. You can make your way outside, make your way back into the bar and have a seat for a while. We also, as I mentioned, do have so many staff here, so they would love to talk to you. So make sure you do speak to the staff if you'd like to. They're all available for you. So take care of yourself tonight. Please do take care of yourself tonight. Now, like about 9 million others, I made London my home, and I love it. I really love this city. It's, anonymous. I love the anonymity it affords us. I really love the connections that we can make here, the opportunities that we have. It is, the biggest, the brightest and the boldest place to live in the UK. But last year, almost 90,000 domestic abuse incidents were reported to the Met Police, and obviously many more were not. The threat of violence against women and girls has been magnified. Too many women have been lost to male violence, and you only need to look at the cases of Sarah Everard, Sabina Nessa, Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman to see that. They highlight this growing issue of sexual violence and harassment on our streets. It's an issue that absolutely cannot be ignored. Every time we step out of our homes, we have to plan our own safety, don't we? We put our own measures in place a lot of the time to keep ourselves safe. When we're coming home late, especially at night, we tell people where we're going. We, even when we say things like, let me know you get home safe, it just slips off the tongue to friends, and we say it without thinking just how devastating that we even have to say that is. And sometimes that relief that we feel when we walk home, when we arrive and get in the door unscathed, it's palpable. And we text our friends to say, I'm back. Are you? Have you got back home safe? Just, to have these experiences is unthinkable, really. But we don't just experience them once in our life. We're going through this every single week. We are here, obviously, to celebrate International Women's Day, and we are so thrilled that you have chosen to be here tonight to share it with us, because together we really are powerful. We've got an evening of firsts tonight, the world premiere of the Solace charity film, the launch of their new future strategy, and a panel of brilliant, thoughtful, trailblazing women all working to make the world a better, safer place for women and for girls. So we're going to start by showing you the work that Solace do. I'm sure many of you know it, many of you have seen our wonderful campaigns, but I do want you to remember that the women in this film are now safe, supported, and they have the help that they need to live strong futures. We'd like to take an extra moment just to thank the women that were brave enough to come forward and to be in this film. Thank you so much. Your bravery will help so many other women going through other experiences and will help inspire them to see there is hope.
When we get into relationships, we always think it's for life, but unfortunately, that is not always the case.
It was a lot of arguments in front of our child, and the arguments always left me thinking, I need to leave, I can't do this anymore. Where do I go?
I was raped, and I was just so full of despair and anger at this point. Where was I going to get my own support from?
My partner was violent to me and my daughter. I remember myself hugging her, crying, and I telling her, sorry, I cannot do anything.
He said he gave me a week to commit suicide, that if I didn't, he was going to kill me himself. I think that was when it dawned on me that this guy is more dangerous than I thought.
It was scary to leave because, if you fail, you may end up in the hospital if you're lucky.
Every 3 days, a woman is murdered due to domestic abuse. And that doesn't take into account the women that have taken their own lives because of the domestic abuse that they have experienced.
I've had situations where our refuges are completely full. I've had situations where I've met up with women who have just had knives held to their throat.
It's a serious situation.
Hence, the work that we do is so needed.
Solace is a domestic abuse charity. We've been in operation now for over 45 years.
We get survivors of all sexualities, all backgrounds, and in all different age categories.
We support over 20,000 women a year.
Hi, Solace Women's Aid, how can I help?
We've got staff members picking up phone calls through our advice line. We've got staff members supporting women to get into refuges safely.
I came to the refuge with my daughter. I remember the day like it happened yesterday. It was really, really scary, but I knew that I have to take the step, like now or never. Get help now and get out, or you lose everything.
It felt like a safe house, more than a safe house.
I've been doing really well since I moved into the refuge, working full-time. It's really opened doors for me. I think the future definitely looks promising for me and my child.
We support more than 300 women and young children at these refuges.
Solace provides a lifeline for these women to access support, start rebuilding their lives.
In that time, they've usually done a RISE workshop, parenting workshop, budgeting workshops, counselling. So by the time they leave, their confidence is so much higher.
Living here, that was the first time I had control. I started in here, I started in this room, talking about freedom.
As a rape victim, I shouldn't have to feel lucky that I got help. The help should have just been there. I shouldn't have had to fight so hard to get it because these services are so underfunded.
In London, it's estimated that 8,000 women and girls are raped every year.
Solace is able to provide specialist help for such women.
We have our multiple disadvantage services, and they support women with multiple disadvantages. So it could be substance misuse, mental health. We also have our therapeutic services, and that's mainly based around counselling. And then we have our children and young people services, and that's more around prevention, really.
Solace, what comes to mind when I hear solace? First word is care.
Like the biggest, fiercest group of warriors you could really ever come across.
I didn't know support like this existed, and if I had known, I probably would have left years ago.
It's life-saving. I mean, I can't put it any other way.
It feels like you're building something and you take that journey with them.
I was working with a woman for about 2 years, going through a sexual and domestic abuse case. Then about 6 months after working with her, walked past a cafe and saw her sat inside laughing with her son.
To be able to live my life and to have hopes and dreams, that's amazing.
I had a picture of what I wanted to look like, and to be honest, I am dressed the way I always wanted to look.
When I think about Solace, I just feel inspired, motivated, independent, strong, and confident.
They helped me see life. Basically, they empowered me.
I mean, isn't it really amazing to see and to hear the transformation that women go through when they do find that help? And in a year, especially the last couple of years, there's so much more focus on kindness now. And, you know, I feel it's quite devastating to hear people say that, you know, they are entitled to that help, and that it's not necessarily just being provided for them, which is why Solace is here. It was a really beautiful video. Big thank you to Kirsty from Roll 9 for creating this and for creating a number of other fabulous campaigns from Solace in the last couple of years. Big thank you to Kirsty. Now it does bring us nicely to why Solace is looking to the future with their 5-year strategy. Solace Futures. Now here to tell us what it is are the entire executive team.
We haven't rehearsed. We are delighted to launch our 5-year strategy as a united team. We represent our staff, our service users, our volunteers, and everyone who collaborated with us, because we believe it is important to stand together and to stand up for all women and children. Solace Futures is designed to deliver our strategic vision starting from today and for the next 5 years. We are ambitious and want to drive change at every level to ensure that everyone lives lives free from violence, abuse, and exploitation.
As we started to develop our new strategy, the COVID-19 pandemic and all its devastating impact started to change the way that we worked and delivered our services. At the same time, as an organisation working intersectionally, we took the time to review our approach to our feminism in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement and our commitment to providing support to trans women, as well as focusing on recognising the intersectional impact of disability and class.
This strategy has been developed in light of the lasting impacts of COVID-19 and our bold ambitions to change, equity and inclusion. As we've grown as an organisation, we have become more visionary about what we want to do to support survivors of all forms of violence and abuse. We have diversified and strengthened our services to provide holistic support packages to women, children and the men who need them. We we have started to strengthen and build on our own existing partnerships and develop our influencing work at all levels, amplifying the voices of more than 20,000 women that we work with each year.
We hope you will support Solace on our journey. And in celebrating International Women's Day, we end with our vision, which is a world where everyone is able to live safe and independent lives, which are free from gender-based violence, abuse and exploitation. Thank you. There is so much work to do. Please stand with us.
Thank you so much, Judith, Jane, Jen and Retna. Now, you will have heard that a major part of the strategy is working in partnership, working together. We are now going to showcase some of our new and long-standing partnerships. We treasure all of our collaborations because, of course, we can't do it alone. Solace is thrilled to announce the new partnership with Banham Security. They are the largest security provider in London and in the South East. They're a family business with almost 100 years of experience in protecting people. And today we hear from Lucy, who unfortunately couldn't be here but joins us by video message.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be there in person with you all. However, I feel very privileged to still be included in tonight's celebration. On behalf of everybody at Banham, we're proud to announce our partnership with Solace Women's Aid. And this feels even more special to be announcing this on International Women's Day. Women's safety on the streets of London has always been an important conversation topic. And particularly at Banham, where we're a family business with over 100 years experience in protecting people, the safety of women is something we care about, not just for our customers, but for our colleagues, their families, and the wider community. In the 12 months to October 2021, there were 36 domestic abuse homicides, an increase of 55% on the previous year in London alone. Domestic abuse accounts for 1 in 8 crimes reported to the Met Police. Therefore, we wanted to support Solace and their women's safety campaign by working together to provide personal attack alarms for women. We hope that these alarms will help bring greater peace of mind and personal security to women, particularly those who have experienced domestic abuse, stalking and/or street harassment. Going beyond the immediate benefit of these alarms, we want to go further in making a contribution to women's safety. Our Banham Academy has recently launched our first women's apprenticeship programme to help bridge the gender gap in our industry, and we're very excited to work further with Solace to provide these opportunities to the women that they support. We hope with our academy that we can open up more opportunities to women who want to learn new skills and receive training so that they can embark on new beginnings and careers and so they can join the workforce and live independent lives. We look forward to continuing to work with Solace and thank you all for supporting them and the good work that they're doing. Thanks so much and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much there to Lucy. Now, we are also really thrilled to be entertaining a new partnership now with New Look. We look forward to working together to raise awareness of the threat of violence against women and girls. And also eCubed. So Judy Kawaguchi, expert advisor and past Solace trustee. Judy is also the founder of eCubed, a social enterprise with the mission to engage people and empower communities to end violence across London, raising unrestricted funding for local non-profit organisations such as Solace Women's Aid, with an aim to build safer lives and strong futures free from sexual and domestic violence. Please welcome Judy.
Phone. It's not separation anxiety with my phone. I like to stand, but I guess I just have to stand here. Okay, just take some of my notes here. So yes, so I'm Judy Kawaguchi. I'm the founder of eCubed. I've actually been supporting Solace for almost 13 years. So actually longer than, probably longer than some of the board members actually. And as I was mentioned, I was a trustee actually for 3 terms, so close to 7 years. And I am currently the expert advisor for Solace's Business Development Committee as well. So eCubed actually is a social enterprise, and we're run by a group of volunteers who are absolutely passionate. And we feel that when we engage people, we can empower the communities to end violence. And we raise funds for organizations like Solace, where we share the same mission to end violence across London and build safer lives and future lives for women and children. As you heard, survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence have their lives destroyed by constant assault, emotional abuse, and rape. And this actually cuts across all demographics, cuts across age, cuts across race, socioeconomic status, everything. And that's why I started with doing Rock Against Violence 11 years ago. And I started Rock Against Violence because I wanted to bring people together in an event that actually is accessible to all and cuts across all demographics. Because it's so important to raise awareness of this domestic abuse and the challenges that women and children face, but also to raise awareness of the amazing work that Solace and their staff do to actually save lives for 27,000 women and children who are survivors of domestic violence across London. And then, of course, along with that comes the fundraising that we do. Now, we had to take a break last year because of the pandemic, but I'm really happy to say that we actually celebrated our 10-year anniversary of Rock Against Violence. And over the last decade, we were able to raise over £200,000 all for Solace. And that's also with generous corporate gift matching of corporates as well. So if any of you guys are actually part of corporates and you have some kind of gift matching available, make sure that you utilize your full limit that you can for your companies in support of Solace Women's Aid, okay? And then, so another thing that I wanted to mention is that, I think you saw it in the video, but without the right support, women and children really could face poverty, homelessness, severe mental health issues, and possibly alcohol and domestic abuse as well. You also heard from, Judith didn't mention it this time, but she was mentioning in the back that during the last year, during this pandemic, there was a significant increase in Solace's services demands because everyone was cooped up inside. And then Solace saw an increase of 117% in the demand of their advice line. And you heard about the life-saving effort that the women do answering those advice line. Now imagine this. Imagine you're a woman sitting in the house and you find that one moment when your violent partner leaves the house and you pick up the phone and you have the courage to say, I want to leave. I want to have a new life with my children. Pick up the phone, you call the advice hotline, and there's no one there to answer the phone. And then the violent partner comes back home and you just missed that one opportunity to gain a safe life for you and your children. And that actually is a real story, and those are real and happens multiple times. So it's a sliding door moment, and that is the kind of thought that haunts me every day. The kind of thought that because of one phone call, we couldn't save a woman's life. And that's why when people ask me, why do you do this? Why do you run eCubed? Why do you support Solace? It's because if I can do one fundraising event, 2 fundraising events, and allow Solace to answer one more phone call so that we can save one more woman's life and one more child, then our mission is accomplished. And that's why I do this for Solace. That's why I've been doing this for Solace for 13 years, and I encourage all of you to do the same. Because if we stand together, as we say, we are going to be powerful together, and we can make that difference. And the organizations like Solace need significant funds. As you can say, the contracts are not enough. They need unrestricted funding to continue to provide additional services for women that need to regain independent lives after this horrific abuse. And therefore, we started with Rock Against Violence, but we expanded our efforts out to Jazz Against Violence, Racing Against Violence, which is for those of you who might be interested in athletic events, to expand all sorts of audience to attract people to take part, to stand together. So, I encourage, there's so many ways to do this. And of course, if you want to join our efforts within eCube to do these fundraising, you can always join us as well. And just a little plug, on 11th of May, we're going to be running Jazz Against Violence for Solace at the Looking Glass, which is just around the corner. And thank you. And again, we'll have cocktails, we'll have jazz singing. And I was joking about how I actually learned to retrain as a jazz singer now, so I'm gonna do a little little snippet in the beginning in case you want to come see it. So I think that's really, there's so many ways, and that's why I always come here and I want to advocate. Again, underpinning everything that we do at eCubed is this passion to want to make a difference, a passion to know that you can also make a difference. So let's join on the journey with Solace to create safer lives for women and children and support, because we can be powerful together.
Oh my goodness, Judy, an incredible woman who's done incredible work and who's also an incredible speaker. I mean, I don't know what was on that phone, but you didn't look at it very much, Judy. You didn't need it. You didn't need it. You didn't need it. Thank you so much there, Judy. And of course, our final partnership is with MBA Stack. They are a creative marketing agency who have worked with Solace over the last 3 years to create groundbreaking campaigns. Most recently, Solace and MBA Stack were named Grand Prix finalists at the prestigious DMA Awards for a Christmas campaign conveying the trauma and PTSD that women and children live with long after abusive relationships.
Hi, thank you. So we started working with Solace, I think it was probably about 4 years ago now. And it all started when someone in our creative team read the stats around football and how if England lose in a football match, domestic violence goes up. And I think we were all shocked, and so shocked that actually we felt we needed to do something about it. So that kind of led to us coming to Solace, having an initial conversation about potentially running a campaign. And that's kind of led us into now, I think, 5 campaigns that we've been running with you guys. I mean, we've heard it all here tonight. The work that Solace do is amazing and absolutely needed. And the people at Solace are also amazing. And I think the energy, the commitment, the passion makes actually working together fun and feels like a real partnership. From an agency point of view, we would commit and continue to support and work with Solace in all the fundraising efforts wherever we can, and I hope that we continue to deliver campaigns that not only creatively strong, but also get the message out there, help drive awareness, but ultimately help also raise money so that you can support more women. I'll hand over to John, who's going to talk a little bit more about the creative.
Thanks, Nick. So as Nick said, we've worked on a number of campaigns with Solace over the last few years, but just wanted to draw your attention to 2 in particular this evening, which have particularly gained traction, and you'll see in a minute in a case study film that that's been put together. And they were created to communicate awareness of coercive control and PTSD respectively. And I think although both campaigns lived on social media platforms, they used very different approaches to create awareness of issues of domestic abuse and, of course, to prompt donations. But they're both interesting as they get around this incredibly difficult challenge that we always have when we're communicating domestic abuse, of how to communicate domestic violence sensitively without upsetting those who've lived through and experienced it, while at the same time, of course, being impactful, emotive, and making people sit up and really take notice. And I think both campaigns we're going to show you in a sec succeeded in not transgressing this sort of huge and understandable sensitivities around how domestic abuse violence is portrayed. Interestingly, they were created by a mixed team comprising both females and males. So the first you're going to see is called Hidden Abuse, and it involved a technological first by using what was the Hidden Replies feature, which Twitter had just introduced at the time. And what happened was, by the Hidden Replies feature allowed us to show this, the hidden abuse behind a seemingly kind of happy relationship. So when you activate the Hidden Replies feature, you're able to see by the language message by the male partner the coercive control exerted towards his girlfriend. And then the second project, Make It Stop, was really at its simplest level a Christmas fundraising film. However, it brought to life the trauma of PTSD experienced by women who have left a domestic abuse relationship and who continue to suffer flashbacks and relive their experiences again and again and again. In the film, we don't see any people actually, and we don't hear or see any evidence of domestic violence per se, just the looping nightmare of a jolly Christmas song and the quick repetitive cuts in the imagery of a seemingly cozy Christmas scene. So let's take a look at these two pieces of work, Hidden Abuse and Make It Stop.
Domestic violence is one of Britain's most hidden crimes, with millions of victims enduring horrific treatment behind closed doors.
If I dressed like that when I was with him, afterwards he'd like shout at me for being a slag and a slut.
Promises of happily ever after alternated with abject rage, menace, silent treatment and coercive control.
Worst case scenario is the number of women who attempt or go on to commit suicide as a result. I think the numbers are about 9 women a week, so it's a huge problem. And so it was a really difficult time for services, because we just knew that women were trapped and they felt let down, really let down.
It was during lockdown and they had seen such a surge in demand for their services. And what they briefed us on at Christmas was really about what happens to women once they leave a abusive relationship. And what often happens is that women who are survivors of abusive relationships have flashbacks. Whatever's happened to them, it just carries repeating over and over again in their minds. And that's what the therapy is there for. It's to stop that reoccurring nightmare, reliving the situation over and over again. That's what the Christmas campaign was about, raising money to stop that from happening.
When you first look at it, you see this perfect house with a fireplace. So the only thing really that is the nightmare is the editing and the sound and the repetition.
Yeah, it needed to be painful, you know, it's like, and it's really hard because you're trained to not do something like that. You're trained to do something, you know, that somehow sticks to certain rules of storytelling. But this one was, you know, breaking them.
You know, there's no off switch for sufferers of domestic abuse. Yeah. And I think that's what this film conveys. You know, there feels like there is no off switch, you know. Yeah. And yeah, actually, you know, the hope is, you know, through your donations, through therapeutic services, we can turn that switch off.
Make it stop. Stop women and children reliving domestic abuse and sexual violence.
I have a diagnosis of complex PTSD, and the film straight away, in a very direct manner, goes straight to the heart of what it feels like to have PTSD. The constant repetition of memories and feelings, it's so powerful. Like it made me well up, because I get it, I completely get it.
Make it stop was such a kind of great line to put at the end of it, because as you're watching it, you feel like, I want this to stop, you know, and I think that was one of our challenges, was, you know, how long we made this film, because on the one hand we wanted to really draw out that sense of this nightmare, this never-ending nightmare that goes on and on and on and on, but on the other hand we kind of needed to get to the point as well, being on social, and getting to the real ask, which was to raise money.
We only had £9,000 investment to do the film, or to do everything, which meant for us it was all about making sure we had a very clever and impactful creative idea that would help us get cut through and get the reach that we really wanted to achieve for Solace. We launched the campaign then with no media budget, but we needed to make sure we got it out there as far as we could. So we posted onto Solace's channels, so across Twitter and across Instagram, and then we used Solace's and our agency's network to push this film out and to get that conversation started.
There were two big influencers that were willing to help, that had really high following, like Charlotte Crosby and Sally Carmen. And once they shared it on their social posts, it definitely helped enhance the conversations and make the campaign more visible.
This campaign did serve a real purpose in terms of showing people that it's not bruises, it's the emotional trauma that women and children, you know, carry around with them for years sometimes if they don't get help.
It's something that stays with you forever. That's a really important point to make, is that domestic abuse is not something you get over, it's something that you learn to live with.
I'm feeling more positive every day, and I've managed to find coping methods myself for my crisis times.
We've built really strong, trusting relationships with women who often remain very marginalised and, very isolated.
Counselling enabled me to feel empowered. I felt like I could sort of reclaim what was going on inside of me, which is just completely vital to being able to live a healthy and happy, functional life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, so much to Nicola and to John there. Thank you for coming on and telling us about the incredible work you do. Now, before we kick off our panel session, we just want to have a short video for you, and it is from another wonderful charity called Daddyless Daughters, and the founder, Alia Ali, will be joining us on the panel.
Can't have an abortion again because an abortion is not a form of contraception. So you wanted to act like you was a big woman, now you're going to act like a big woman kind of thing.
There was one guy that I slept with that she classifies it as rape because I didn't consent, but I didn't say no, I just lied there scared and I allowed him to do what he was doing.
And I was just thinking, like, how can you not even come out and stand up for your own daughter? And he stood there and he went to them, if that girl comes back in my house, I'm going to cut off both her legs.
The amount of, I only ever smoked crack. I didn't take any other drug. I didn't drink. And how much of it I did.
Wonderful. Now, as I mentioned, we'll shortly be inviting our panelists to the stage, but I would like to introduce them to you all now, and in no particular order. We have Maya Tutton. Maya is a leading campaigner, speaker and writer on the issue of sexual harassment in public spaces. As co-founder of Our Streets Now, the nationwide campaign tackling public sexual harassment. Maya has spent years working across policy, education and media to make public spaces safer for women, girls and marginalised groups. Alongside this campaigning, Maya has carried out research and publishing, writing on the pervasive issue of sexual harassment and how we might tackle it. Also joining us, I told you this was going to be an amazing panel, also joining us is Alia Ali. Alia is a trauma-informed trainer, consultant, speaker and the founder of Daddyless Daughters, as we saw from the video. Using over a decade worth of lived and professional experience, Alia specialises in working with girls and young women with complex needs, who may have been affected by a family breakdown or a high risk of being groomed and exploited, both criminally and sexually. Also joining us is Rehema Mathamia. Rehema is currently Miss England 2021. She is passionate about numerous social causes and focuses on using her platform to stand up and speak out for voiceless people and make a difference in her community. Rehema currently works as a health technology consultant, advising and assisting medical institutions on the digitisation of their patient medical health records. Passionate about STEM field, Rehema aims to use her platform at Miss England to encourage women and minority ethnic groups to enter the field. Rehema is herself a domestic abuse survivor and uses her experiences to help others recognise abuse behaviours and understand healthy relationships to save the lives of the next generation. Can everyone put their hands together for our amazing panel? Would like to... I think we should be on. We're going to check these. Mic check. There we go.
No, mine's not on.
It will be on if we give it a little second. I'm sure the tech team will catch up with us in just a tick, won't they?
Hello? Oh, no, it's fine.
Now, it is... Are we all on? We're all on and working. Seamless-ish enough. It's so lovely to have you here, and it's nice to have the opportunity to speak in a panel about some of the issues that we've just been discussing and some of them that we've heard about. But we're here on International Women's Day. It's been a busy week, hasn't it? How's everything been? What has everyone been up to? I know you've been quite busy, haven't you?
So I am Rahima Madani, the current Miss England, and as you mentioned, I've been working sort of raising awareness of domestic abuse, and for the past week or so, I've been going into schools and speaking about domestic abuse, FGM. I am of a Kenyan heritage originally, and that's quite rife in Kenya. So I've been going to speak to minority ethnic girls and talk about that. So it's been an amazing experience so far.
And you're getting your bags packed for going away to Miss World.
I am. I leave in 3 days, so going to find the sunshine.
I'll be vibing off that Instagram feed. And how about yourself, Maya? How's it been this last week?
Yeah, I was just saying that I'm going to sleep next week. It's been really busy. It's also been my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, thanks. It's been a bit of like a blessing and a curse having International Women's Day and my birthday fall in such like close proximity, because it's like celebrate and also speak and talk about violence against women and girls. So yeah, busy times, but good.
Perfect time to have a girls' night out. Surely we're all up for nights out. And how about yourself, Alia? Because you've been speaking a lot, haven't you?
Same. I've been in a lot of schools this week and trying to wrap up the final of our podcast production, which has been quite interesting as well.
I mean, it looks exciting from what we saw. Congratulations. When's it launching?
Well, we're hoping next week, Jay.
Oh,
let's hope so.
Is that an exclusive?
I'm ready to go.
Well, it is really wonderful, really wonderful to have you all with us. And I think we will kick off. Hopefully we'll have about half an hour with our panel. And if there's time, have a think about maybe some questions. And if we're able to at the end, we'd love to put that out to the audience, and if you have any questions for our panel, then you may have the opportunity to speak to them. But just to kick things off, I guess all the stats at the moment, combined with recent high-profile cases, suggest that gender-based violence, sexual assault, and harassment in London is an all-time high. How did we get here? I'm going to put that to you first, Rahima.
I think. You say it's at an all-time high. Statistics have shows that it has increased over the past 10 years, but I don't think it's anything new, unfortunately. We do live in a patriarchal society. I hate to drop that term, but we do. And violence against women and girls has been there from the dawn of time. This isn't anything new. It's something that has happened, and I think, unfortunately, it's more towards the fact that we are speaking about it more. Women are now able to use their voice, and it's less of a taboo subject. Speaking for myself, growing up, I experienced sexual harassment on the streets of London. I grew up in northwest London. Things happened, but we didn't discuss it at all. But now we as women have enabled each other to have a platform where we're able to speak about such issues. And I think it's less of the fact that it has increased, unfortunately, but we are now reporting it more, and we're less ashamed of the fact that such incidences are happening.
Why do you think we are talking about it more now?
We're empowering each other. There were discussions that I had. I grew up in northwest London. I went to an all-girls schools, and some of the things that we experienced, I don't know if you've come across the website, Everyone's Invited. A lot of us, we went through that. We were being catcalled in the streets at 11 years old. I had a man grab him, put his hand up my skirt, horrific things. But we normalized it. It wasn't anything that we thought this is just what men do, this is what boys do, this is what happened. And we've understood now that it's not normal. We do need to have discussions about it. And when we as women come together, when we share our experiences and we have conversations, we notice that, if we speak about it, a difference can be made. And I hope a difference can be made the more that we talk about it too.
Thank you. And Alia, would you agree then? Because I know we spoke earlier, and there were a few opinions maybe shared there, but you might not agree either that this is at an all-time high, maybe that we just we're hearing about it more.
Yeah, I don't think that it's like a new thing. I think it's something that's definitely been taking place behind closed doors for far too long. And now, you know, thanks to social media, a lot of more women are coming forward and expressing their experiences. Us at Daddyless Daughters, you know, we explore not only a multi-generational conversation, we are essentially daughters of domestic violence. A lot of the things that we saw growing up were normalized, you know, like you mentioned, we saw a lot of violence in our households, in our community, growing up on council estates and that type of thing. So once we went out into the community, me and myself included, you know, it was inevitable that we was going to end up in situations where we may have been groomed and exploited to do certain things. So I don't think it's a new thing. I just think that it's something that's coming out of the shadows. And I'm quite happy that we're disrupting a lot of conversations right now. And I hope that we continue to do that.
I mean, you've both mentioned that things do seem to be changing. I think across the board, things are changing. You know, we're becoming a lot more aware of the impact of our words, for example. As someone who works in comedy, I know that, you know, that we're often very scared. Comedians think they're going to be cancelled now, but actually what it's doing is make us really do consider the impact of our words and kindness and putting kindness first. And, you know, I think that's also the same with our actions as well. But Maya, I wanted to ask you, you know, as a co-founder of Our Streets Now, what do you think then? Why are we in this situation we're in at the moment?
Yeah, I think I would definitely echo the point that, you know, I don't know if it is happening more. I think something really important obviously has been how COVID has changed the current situation of male violence. And specifically with public sexual harassment, you know, we saw some really disturbing ways in which the pandemic was influencing the harassment that women and marginalised genders were facing in public space, whether that was increased mental health impact. So if you can only leave the house once a day and you're being sexually harassed in often really violent ways, the impact that that's going to have on your sense of self and your sense of, you know, being part of a community and of public spaces is much greater, all the way to actually, you know, I heard of a lot of testimonies about like women being spat on, for example, or, you know, actually the threat of actually contracting COVID-19 pre-vaccination being really clear. So I think when I think about how male violence has changed in the last few years, it is the pandemics that's like changed it the most. But in terms of rates of violence, I can only speak to public sexual harassment and street harassment, but I don't think it has increased. I think it's about, you know, exactly what you were saying in terms of, do we feel like it's even something that's valid to speak about? Because actually a lot of what we see are testimonies that maybe 10, 15 years ago, particularly if you're, you know, a girl, you're under 18, you feel like maybe this isn't valid to bring up, this isn't valid to like hold space for. So I think, yeah, maybe it's less that it's increased and maybe it's more that we're finally starting to like break down the myths and the taboos and the stigma to give space to victims and survivors.
It's interesting actually that we talked about the way things, I guess, used to be, or our memories. And it's what we do. We kind of share our stories of incidents that happened to us. And, you know, you're right. I remember being on the street and crossing the other side of the road when I would come across a group of boys because I didn't want to have to take whatever it was they were going to say to me. I was anticipating what might happen. And a lot of that maybe is challenging those behaviours. Quite often to engage in a conversation with, you know, groups of men, young men, as it was at the time, you know, we would never have had that conversation then, but certainly having that conversation with them now, many of them are completely oblivious, I think, to the impact that those kind of scenarios would have. What do you think can be done to challenge behaviours? And I'm going to come back to yourself, Rima.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but just violence against women and girls. It's not women, you know, sexually harassing or abusing other women. It's the males that are doing so. And I think it's really important for us to have those conversations with such men. When I think of myself, I recently had a conversation with some male friends and spoke to them about how me coming home, I fear leaving my home in the middle of the night as a woman, and I have to be so precautious. And these are men in their 20s, you know, it was such an eye-opener for them to think, you know, why would you fear going home? You're just going home. They don't have those perspectives of views. But I think it's important that we really tackle, the belief system and the understanding that men have, I don't want to, men bash, but really get to the crux of why it is that they have particular views and why is it that they consider particular actions normal. And I think it's only then that we get to the pinpoint of that we can start to have a discussion about it. But I think it really starts from the foundations of speaking about our experiences as women, hopefully letting them understand what the implications may be, and maybe there may be a change from that. But I think it will definitely take some time, but conversations definitely need to be had and be quite open.
Because, we are talking about keeping our streets safe, and that has to start with conversations and it has to start with education, but there's also the impact of our police force, and, that sort of sexist, racist culture in the Met contributed to the resignation earlier this year of Cressida Dick. The handling of certain cases, certain high-profile cases, such as the murder of Sarah Everard, it definitely contributed to this. But what do we need to see from our police force? Because they've come under a lot of scrutiny. But Alia, what does the Met need to do to combat this, to help us to keep our streets safe, make our streets safe?
Me being trauma informed, I have to really understand the impact of trauma, and the police are exposed to trauma every day and all day. And I question what systems are also in place to help them unpack that, help them understand what's actually happening with these survivors and victims. But also aside from that, I feel like more space needs to be created for lived experience, and then for us to bridge that gap between the police force and those of us that do have lived experience. Me personally, growing up in an environment that I grew up on, I had to adopt, I wouldn't say I had to, I think I was conditioned to adopt an us versus them mentality, right? And I grew up in a household also where I was conditioned to keep a lot of secrets. So I didn't necessarily know how to trust the systems that were also in place. And that had an impact on my attitude going into these type of rooms and me disclosing certain things that happened to me, So I think that we just have to continue having the conversation. And the conversation is not as straightforward as what maybe we feel like it is. It's very multidimensional. And there needs to be more space created for how many layers there are to genuinely unpack. And a lot of the work that I have done with the police thus far, there is gaps that we need to bridge between communication between the police, social service, us that are in the third sector. There's so many disconnects that we also have to explore. So yeah, I don't feel there's one straightforward solution. There's so many layers to unpack, and that's why we're more powerful together, because we can all take different parts of the conversation and tackle it.
The trust is broken, isn't it, in the police at the moment? And I think where there's that distrust, it has to start with rebuilding that. But Maya, you work a lot in this space, especially. I wonder if you have some thoughts on this, on what needs to be done, the first steps really that need to be taken in sort of bridging that gap and starting to repair the relationship with the Met.
Yeah, I think it's a very complicated issue. I think at our streets now, we are pro defunding the police, so we don't believe that police being on the streets does actually make them particularly safer. So that's kind of our official stance, is that we don't believe that empowering the police is the answer in terms of male violence. And I think in general, just the way that we talk about how we respond to male violence, I think, kind of going back to the point about boys, how are we raising our children? Why are we not focusing on prevention? Why is it that we always think about what we're going to do after the incident and never about actually how are we changing our society so that this stops happening? So yeah, I think for us it's about maybe looking past police to actually beyond the criminal justice system. How are we educating on sexual harassment, and how are we including this in the curriculum, and how are we training teachers to be able to be there for students when they come forward with stories of sexual harassment and abuse?
But I mean, I guess that comes down to sort of government policy, or it feeds into government policy. And I guess it kind of then also leads quite nicely into the next question about, what the response has been from the government. Has it been adequate? Because, we're seeing, and I think it's easy to draw conclusions when you see really high profile cases, and to make distinctions based on a very few cases. But actually, the stats do suggest there is a problem here. We all feel it. We all know there's a problem. Solace are working with people every day that can recognise that issue exists, but yet nothing seems to be done. Nothing has been done. So, what kind of role do policymakers have to play in this? You talked about defunding the police, but what about policymakers? What could they do to help resolve this?
So we have a set of policy asks across different sectors, which I'm happy to share. I think it's about us kind of having that whole society approach, right? We all have a role to play. So if you work in a transport company, like how much funding are you putting to awareness campaigns? How much funding are you putting to training your staff on trains to be able to respond to when incidents of sexual harassment take place? In terms of educational policy, why don't we fund proper RSE in our schools? Why aren't we putting the money behind male violence? I think, as well, I was very frustrated by the way in which the government's response to the incredibly high profile femicides of the last year was to put kind of 25 million into a fund that's largely been spent on CCTV and lighting, as though the problem is the design, not the deeply entrenched patriarchal and racist structures of our society. I just think we need to look past changing this physical settings of our society to actually what are the structures underneath all of this? And I think in terms of policy, I believe in it. I believe we need to bring this conversation to Parliament, and I believe it should be in every single department, and every single department should be thinking about what can we do to change, healthcare systems. How is it that first responders can actually be trained in terms of both coercive control, intimate partner abuse, and sexual harassment in public spaces?
I completely agree, and I think that there's a joined up thinking that needs to happen. It's not potentially just that one thing, but Rehma, what would you like to see happen from the top? What do you want to see policymakers introducing? What would you like to see passed in government?
I'll share a bit of my own experience, I think, just to help out here. So I was in an abusive relationship. It wasn't physically abusive, but it was emotional and physical, psychological abuse. And I did end up going to court to get a restraining order. It was after 2 years of being abused, then another 2 years of stalking and harassment that was rampant. And I had every bit of file and evidence that anyone could possibly have. And when I went to the court system, I got a 2-year restraining order and a fine, and that was it. And, anyone that looked at the case that I had, it was quite obvious that this was going to continue. And from my own experience, and this is why I'm just so passionate about, speaking and raising awareness of domestic abuse, it's needs to be taken seriously.
It's the fear of escalation, because you often hear that's how it begins, and the fear that you develop knowing what happens in other situations.
Definitely, and so it's almost demoralizing, because I think for myself, I was able to get the support and move through that. But there are women that are in far worse situations that then have the strength to then go report that and get some help, and justice isn't served. I think I read a statistic somewhere that said of over the 50,000 sexual violence cases, only 800 in a year, I don't even know if that's even a year, end up with criminal convictions. And it's not good enough. The people at the top need to do more to help women and girls. And what I would hope is that, those in the Parliament really seek to understand the experiences, I think, as Alia had mentioned, and understand how serious it is, and how policymakers can really change that to help women get through that.
I mean, the legal system is absolutely something that needs to be addressed, and we've heard it time and time again. But, we're also hearing, Maya spoke about education and about healthcare system as well. I wonder if there's anything, you would like to see being introduced by policymakers.
Not particularly. I think everything's kind of been said on that side. I think what I would like to see is more cultures and communities getting behind victims and survivors. And there's so many barriers that need to be broken within us having these type of conversations, and us to feel safe to kind of come forward and really be transparent with the experiences that we've had within our households or within the community. So my focus is a bit different, not policy. Mine is more culture and conversation and less victim blaming, and less kind of have a real honest, transparent conversation about what it's like to really live with these type of experiences.
Well, I mean, on that point, we know we spoke earlier just about, you know, what we need to see change. But this year on International Women's Day, the theme is break the bias. And one, of course, that we face is misogyny. What do we need to see from boys and from men? What do they need to do to help us with this? What can they do to help us?
I feel like they need to feel like they're welcomed into the conversation as well. There's a lot of women in the room today. At the event that I went to yesterday at Metro Bank, there was more men in the room than women, and I like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I like that, and it was promoted as a Women's Day event, but we really explored what it was like to be in the workplace as a woman, what it was like to live with certain experiences as a woman within the workplace, and I found that quite empowering to have that conversation with men and build those bridges and break those barriers, essentially. So I feel like we should also empower men to be a part of the conversation as well. There is men that really want to stand up for us and don't know how to, a bit like the conversation around racism. How also do white people stand up for black people, but how do we have that conversation and break those barriers? So I feel like it's the same type of energy that we need to apply, and let them know that, you know, we're not, men are trash, but we're also like, guys, if you don't stand up for us, then you kind of are trash. So
I love that. But I mean, yeah, you're right. And I think that there's a lot more inclusivity that we could do in welcoming men into the conversation. I think there's a lot of work there in terms of being allies, which I know you mentioned kind of race and equality. And I feel like we promote that quite a lot. It seems like people are way more happy to come forward when it comes to being an ally with diversity rather than with women's issues, which yeah. But yes, when it comes to boys and to men, you mentioned before about education, and certainly from how your organisation is working, it's very much looking at sometimes the grassroots level, what can be done, and the prevention rather than the cure.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that feeling, and I think at the end of the day, we're not the ones perpetrating the violence. So like, we're not the ones who are going to be able to stop it. And until we start bringing men and boys and really starting a conversation about what masculinity is and how we're going to restructure it to not be predicated on oppressing women, I think that we're not going to see real change. It's something that we've been on a journey with as an organisation, and I think there's a lot of like anger and frustration with men, and I think that's valid, and we're so right to feel that. But I think at the same time, and I think that's where like our streets, we very much were in that space for a long time, and I think increasingly now as we do more work in schools, it's about kind of like raising the bar in terms of what we expect of boys and men as they grow up, and actually seeing that, you know, I think I get frustrated a little bit with the kind of allyship discussion sometimes because it's very individual. And what I would love is that kind of collective feeling of, you know, actually we're raising a generation to understand these problems and to solve them together. And yeah, so I believe in that kind of engagement work. And at the same time, I'm sometimes a bit jaded.
I wonder how much sort of toxic masculinity plays into it. You know, as someone who came from a family of you know, with many men, constantly having to challenge this as well. And I think about the comment you made, the story you told about when you were in the street and unfortunately what happened to you. And I'm so sorry that did happen to you. But I guess how much do you think then that toxic masculine culture has a part to play? Because, you know, I often think that some men in some work way, they're victims too. How awful to be brought up like this, to think this is okay to behave this way. And it leads to, you know, terrible mental health issues in men who feel like they cannot share, they cannot open up, they cannot tell their friends they feel weak, they must be strong. And, you know, looking at these images of Putin at the moment on his bloody horse. And I just think this is not the image that men need to be brought up with. It's not a strong man, is it? But how much does that toxic masculinity play in then to the behaviours that we see today?
It plays a huge part. I don't feel like I'm one to speak on men's issues, but there is a culture within men, from what my understanding is, there's a monolith from what a man is, what masculinity is, and it's this machismo, strong, no need to feel any emotions, and that's not the case. It's really not the case, and it becomes very, very, very toxic, and they have become, unfortunately, victims because it's a culture that's bred from when they're very, very young. No one is born with particular views or understanding this way. It happens. They grow up and they hear one friend saying something to the street about a woman, calling them a derogatory term, and they may feel ostracized, and all of a sudden it's a cycle to fit in, and it's a cycle that will happen over and over again. And I don't know if it's necessarily our place as women to necessarily get in there and fight against that, but it is for us to point it out and be like, you know what, that's not right. But
aren't the mothers always blamed?
Mothers always blamed. Which is unfortunate, but there's nothing you can do. You can't help. I don't necessarily, I feel like I have to play very on the line here. It's our place to teach the young men to be in a particular way, teach them how to respect women, teach them how to treat other people in general. But there's only so much you can do. End of the day, the children will end up going to school. They will be around other particular men that have different types of views and understandings. And I think that's where it's important to have male role models that have views, they themselves, that are open-minded, and we're able to speak into them and have different points of views. But unfortunately, I think it is due to toxic masculinity a lot of times that we end up in situations like this, and it's not right.
Definitely, and I think there's instilling values in young men from a young age that can also help. But one of the things we've spoken a lot about, I would say, over the last few years is activism, and especially in this sort of environment area. But there's actually been a lot of activism in this area too. Reclaim our streets now. I mean, there's so much work being done, but can these organisations actually find real solutions? I know it's not their responsibility. We feel like there should be something done. We feel like government needs to be funding something, giving money, investing in this. But really, what can be achieved by through activism and through some of these organisations, Maya?
I think a lot can be achieved. I'd like to think that, given that I work on it every day. I think to go back to kind of the point about conversation, right? I think this has reached a level in terms of public national conversation, and has been aided by those kind of grassroots organisations. Ultimately, though, we don't have the power. We're pretty much all volunteers, doing this on top of studying and full-time work, and it's just not feasible for organisations like ours to have to be doing the work of telling government what to do. And what I do get frustrated with is when we do, 180,000 people go into the government rural consultation, and have they been listened to? No. So it's I think the thing that I feel frustrated with as well with activism and campaigning, the barriers, because realistically, who has time to give? Who actually can afford to give time pro bono to an organisation is wealthier people, white people, cisgendered people who might not suffer from, all these different things. And I think the problem is that as long as this work is unpaid, it will uplift certain voices and certain experiences and not the reality. And I think when we see who gets listened to in the media and who gets heard and what experiences of sexual harassment we do talk about and what we don't, it overwhelmingly are stories like mine that are heard. And I think that unpaid activism can only go so far, and there are a huge amount of barriers to activism, and when you don't have the power to make that kind of structural change, all you can really do is make noise.
But in making noise, there's a lot of awareness that you raise in the process. Even just, you know, telling people, having a service is great, but you kind of need to tell people that it exists, or, you know, finding out there's an issue there. We were speaking earlier about some of the initiatives that have been brought in even throughout lockdown, and a lot of companies have the budget potentially to bring something in, but they don't always have the budget for the marketing, to tell people what is out there, to tell women that there's free train fares if they want to flee, you know, relationships. It's things like that. But and I think it's the same for activism. It's you have a purpose, don't you? And it's getting that message out, and sometimes that message is the change, and it is potentially what you need. You kind of touched on something that I wanted to move us on to, which is, you know, maybe we're not all equal in this. We're not seen equally. I mean, during lockdown last year, Sarah Everard's vigil, you know, thousands of people broke lockdown restrictions to attend it. And there was a discussion that came from that case where we spoke about the way in which we amplify some cases. We see them, they're reported in media. You know, the case of how many, you know, white female victims are portrayed in media in contrast to others. And, you know, I wondered if you could all have a think and reflect for me a bit on the public response to these cases, and is it adequate? Are we seeing the right response from everyone? Because we've spoken about police a bit, policy a little, we've spoken about men and boys, and, you know, potentially what we can all do, we can come on to that. But, you know, what about the public response when something happens? You know, are we seeing the right reaction from people?
I feel quite conflicted on this, because I feel like there is politics within activism too, right? And as you mentioned, there's, you know, different faces and you know, different people coming out with different narratives, and depending on what you fit with the media is what's being pushed, right? From my perspective, we've been in the field since 2017, and we've been talking about so many different layers of domestic violence and sexual abuse against girls in particular, and young women and non-binary young people as well. And it's taken us a very long time to kind of get to a space where people are actually kind of receptive and listening. And this is why I also say having cultural conversations are equally as important, because you know, certain of our girls, our beneficiaries and the girls that engage in our conversations, the cultures that are around them are not open to listening. And that's a problem. So yeah, us on our side, we're still kind of trying to figure that out, and we're focused on remaining in the field, you know, because that's where the work actually really matters. And online, it all looks good, and it's all a facade, and that's kind of personally how I felt about International Women's Day this year as well. It's all very like, it looks good online, but who's actually in the field? That's what I want to know, because that's where I am. I know that's where Solace is, because a lot of the girls that we're engaging with, you know, are daughters of their service users. So I really want to know, when are we going to do some real activism in the field and really impact people's lives?
Alia, thank you very much. And you're so right, and you're obviously incredibly passionate about what you do. You're really passionate about the work that you do as well. Rehma, what do you think? You know, is the public response that we're getting from cases and from the reports that we see, from the articles, from the headlines, is it right? Are we getting the right response from the public? Because it seems to drift away. It seems to dip very quickly, doesn't it?
I think in the moment, and it's very different, if I touch upon the fact, you know, in the moment we all get very angry and we're just upset, and we're just like, how could this happen in London to young people that we know? It doesn't have to be young, but over time, unfortunately, the hype dies down and we get on about our business and we no longer think about it anymore. But the response is very, very, very different. I'm speaking as a Black woman, I'm British, but I'm on African heritage. The response between white Caucasian women and violence against women and girls to, marginalized women, women of minority ethnic groups, trans, disabled individuals is so different. There are many Black women, minority ethnic women, Asian, that undergo such horrific violent crimes on a daily basis. But when cases like that happen, they don't get the exposure that I necessarily think that they deserve or should be there. And so that leads to a disparity between the two. And it's unfortunately the way that it is in this country, but it's not right. And we really need to pay attention, not to take away from women of a particular race, but really understand that there are cultural nuances and individuals that need to have their voices heard, and it's important as well. And so I think in terms of when it comes to the sort of public reaction, more needs to be done for those that are at a disadvantage in this country.
I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's challenging our own underlying bias or those sort of stereotypes that we all have. But when you see these cases and the way they are treated differently, you realize how dangerous that is. You realize just how the extent of holding these opinions, or we don't even realize. I mean, it's unconscious bias. But what about yourself then, Maya? Are you in a similar position to this, in terms of, ensuring that we have sort of change, meaningful change for women? We need the public to be on our side. We need the public to really have an adequate response and a long-lasting response.
Yeah, I think that long-lasting piece is just what's really, really hard to get, is that kind of continued commitment, that continued conversation, because I think we saw, over the last year how something can dominate the headlines for a couple of weeks and then it goes. And like what follows, a lot of empty promises and a failure to have that kind of continued funding that's necessary for services like Solace's. So I think, in terms of like public conversations, what I'd really like to see is, less reactivity, obviously more intersectionality in terms of what stories are being platformed, what voices are being placed within the media. But then also maybe like more self-reflection. I think when we talk about male violence, very, very often, the big thing in the news was men like start crossing the road when there's a woman alone on the street. And do obviously do that, but also reflect like in a deep way about actually, do you laugh when there's a slightly sexist joke that actually you've let slide? And do you think about in your workplace, like have you actually proactively thought about anything from the temperature of the office to whether there are menstrual products? Have you thought about like really applying the lessons and teachings of like intersectional feminism in your life? Like that kind of deeper engagement with the issue over a prolonged amount of time is what I'd love to see, beyond the kind of headlines and the like, let's retweet, let's donate £10, but not do that like interior work, which I think is the only way to really beginning to see like structural changes to this problem.
I couldn't agree more, and I don't know if anyone saw, there's a clip online at the moment for something that went viral this week with Gino D'Acampo on This Morning, and his reaction to International Women's Day. On International Women's Day, I don't know if you have seen this, but he was doing, there was a telephone phone-in, and he was in the office with a number of female colleagues, and as a bit of a Gino joke, decided it'd be really funny to kind of remark while they were on the phones that they were all looking for husbands, and that one was potentially looking to cheat on her husband or something. And, I think it's interesting that it blew up in the way that it has over the last 24 hours, that people are really questioning this. I mean, way off the mark tonally, completely way off the mark tonally. Wrong guy for the job on International Women's Day. We do... We do love Gino, and he has his place, and it's not about cancel culture at all whatsoever. It's just educating them and people putting him on the telly to do that one job on International Women's Day. You roll your eyes and you think, that's what we've got a problem with. It's just the wrong time. It's just, it's are you doing the right work? Are we teaching the right things to people? Are they learning the right things? Are they able to apply it into situations? You can't just write people off as lovable rogues anymore. And roll your eyes and say, well, that's just the way they are. It's not, and there's no excuse for it, no matter what age you are. And I think that's something that's coming through really strongly. We're just about almost out of time. And so I just wanted to ask then very, very quickly to all of you, you know, women, we want to feel safe. You know, I mentioned at the start today that, you know, I've had a number of experiences living in London where, you know, you do feel particularly unsafe walking in the streets, and, you know, it's palpable. Your heart is beating through your chest sometimes when something happens, when some idiot on the tube decides to try and chat you up as you're getting off late at night and you have to walk down the road by yourself and you think, oh my God, what if he's angry that I've said no to him? What's his reaction going to be? You know, we all want to feel safe and we want to reclaim independence. You know, what is the one thing that we could do today to help us achieve this? You know, just the one thing, Rahima.
That's a question. In all honesty, that's still something I'm figuring out. I'd love to sit here. No, really, I'd love to sit here and tell you I have an answer for it, but I don't. You know, like you said, your experiences, we all have the same shared experiences. I'd love to say that we should call men out on their actions, but that could be dangerous. I'd love to say that we should, you know, stand up and fight, but, you know, we don't want to put ourselves in situations where it could be a problem. I'd say we need to put the onus back on men. We need to not take that responsibility for ourselves. It's not for us to come up with solutions where we are not even the problem in the first place. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And same question to you, Maya.
I think there's not one thing. I think that's the whole thing, is that we want like quick fix solutions. Do this, sign this, like share this, and actually that's not what you can do. Like, it's actually about sustained long-term commitment to the cause, commitment to being an ally in all these different ways, and not like a one-time ally, but genuinely reflecting on yourself and your own behavior and how day in, day out you can be an agent of change in terms of male violence against women and girls, but also wider structures of societal oppression.
Love that, you're calling me out now. It's a trick question. What's the one thing? There is no one thing. And finally to you, Alia.
I agree with both of you guys, but I think that it's about time us as women start to really explore what does safety look like and feel like, because like I said, I represent daddyless daughters, right? And a lot of our girls, and myself included, never got a chance in life to experience safety and what that actually felt like until late 20s and are still trying to figure it out now. And why I actually even started Daddyless Daughters was because I as a result of me being groomed and exploited, I ended up in prison. And when I was in prison, I met a lot of women that was the first time, myself included, I felt safe. So what does that say about society? So I think that us as women have to start really having honest and transparent conversations about what does safety look like? What does it feel like? Am I even attracted to safety as well? Because when you grow up in a chaotic environment, that also has an impact. And we've explored a lot today about PTSD, but as a daughter of domestic violence, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and that's a whole nother conversation within itself. And the impact that witnessing trauma has on you, not only experiencing trauma. I feel like we just need to create a lot more safe spaces for us as women so we can unpack what does this look like. Because we're saying all kinds of buzzwords and it all sounds good, but does it feel good? And do we even know what this feels like? So I feel like we've got to lay the foundation for us as women and sisterhood and really figure that out. And then we can bring other people.
Wow. Alia, thank you so much. And thank you to you all. Thank you so much for your attention with our panel. It has been incredible speaking to you all. And thank you for taking the questions, for considering them, to giving up so much value and adding to this. It has been really lovely to speak to you. Alia Ali, everyone. Maya Tutton. And Rahima Muthamia. Ladies, if you want to take a seat. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Should I take this one? I'll keep this one. So, okay, wow. Well, the speeches are done and the formal bits are all over now. You'll be glad to know. We can go and have a little drink shortly. Thank you, honestly, thank you so, so much to each and every one of you. I can't believe how full this place is and how packed it is that you came and that you chose to spend tonight with us. We're so grateful. If you would like to make a donation via the big give at the registration desk, then your donation today will be doubled. We do want you to stay for a while with us and have a mingle, have a drink if you're into that. If you want to have a drink, you can have a drink and just meet like-minded people. I realised that we didn't have time for a Q&A session at the end, so I know our panellists will be here for a while. If you want to maybe have a chat with them, they will be available as well. We do want to celebrate International Women's Day and remember that we are powerful together. So before we leave, what I would like to do is, I did mention at the very start that we were going to take a few pictures, and very shortly what I would like you all to do, or welcome you all to do if you want, is to actually come up to the stage so we can get a picture together. But just in case some of you disappear, we're going to try and get some as we are now. So I wonder, to do that, we might need the lights up a little bit so that I can see all these lovely faces. Yes. Because we do want you to post and share and to get involved. So we're going to try, we'll give you a few shots at it. Okay, happy International Women's Day. Come on, we can do better than that one. It was like one of those balloons, wasn't it? They went, oh, okay, happy International Women's Day! There we go. Wonderful, thank you so much. Now, as I mentioned, please, we want everyone, as many as possible, that can come up and get some pictures with us up on stage. We're going to share that. Take as many pictures as you like tonight. Remember, powerful together. Thank you so much, everyone.